extraordinary abilities by the US government in recognition of the work that is done in those areas. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me in putting our hands together to welcome Dr. Yazan Hijazi to take us through journey of innovation, which I think is a very, very current discussion. Yazan, take it away.
Thank you, sir. This is my first sound check, so I'm clear and my presentation is visible. Just a confirmation from you, Jerim.
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Fantastic. So, Asante Sana, thank you so much for the invite. It's a truly humbling and an honor to be among such distinguished guests representing the insurance ecosystem in Kenya and across Africa. I have an affinity towards Africa, although I've never been, but the first country I will visit, well, I've been to Egypt, but first country I will visit will be Kenya. I am fascinated by this, hidden giant from the world. Very impressed with the work and the ethics and the humility of your people. And I always say, we are all Africans. So thank you very much for this invite. I will take you through a journey today. And, we see the word transformation. Now, transformation is many things, but one thing is for sure, a transformative experience will always have a before and after. So transformation is different than change. Change is always happening. It's accelerating, in fact. But transformation implies a before and after. So perhaps I'd like to start with this and just say business as usual is dead. And as Jerim mentioned, as well as the commissioner and Madam Director, we are going through disruption and crisis. And yes, COVID, I like the way you phrased it, Jerim, a good crisis. And but it's not like before COVID, we were all great. If I had asked you, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, how are things? You want to say, oh, life is great. Business is good. The insurance, industry is booming. We're digitalizing. We've been living in crisis, right? But this has definitely accelerated. So let's start with that premise that whatever we've been doing will not take us where we need to go. So something needs to change, something needs to transform. I would like to start with a story from the African savannah, as we are, I know that at least the physically present delegates, you are in Lake Navaisha, looked it up on the map just now, it looks amazing. So every morning on the African savannah, there's a lioness and a gazelle that wake up in the morning. Lioness, because the lion is in his den, lazy and combing his hair. They don't hunt. It's the lioness that gets the food. So power to the lionesses in the room and across whoever is hearing us. So the lioness thinks, today I must run faster than the slowest gazelle to eat, feed my children, and survive. On the same morning, little frazzled gazelle wakes up in the morning and thinks, oh my God, today I have to run faster than the slowest gazelle just to survive. Right? Now, the real moral of the story here is it really doesn't matter if you are the lioness or the gazelle. When you wake up in the morning, you better be running. So no surprise, innovation is the new currency of this new economy. If you have innovation capability, then you have hard currency with you, right? So it's the currency of the new economy. And maybe let's get the elephant out of the room out. The insurance industry worldwide, so this is not particular to Africa or Kenya, is not sexy. You know, it's kind of like what I call the square wheel model. Is it moving? Oh yeah, it moves, you know, but not very efficient. So in today's journey, I hope to give you some thinking tools and some actionable insights, right? So that you can take to your board, to your team, and start thinking around innovation and leading innovation. So how can we move from this square wheel model to something faster, sexier, something that moves the needle? So I'll take you through kind of discussing a little bit, how do you lead through disruption? What does organizational innovation look like? And how do you think about strategy? And also governance. I mean, you're in insurance, I mean, a euphemism for that would be risk management, right? So how do you ensure that there's adequate measures and governance that, one, speak to the regulatory ecosystem, but also make sure that you're doing the right things at the right time? And finally, I'll leave you with some tips, a couple of innovation commandments. So I hope that by the end of this presentation, where I will probably speak for around 50 minutes, 55 minutes, and then take your questions. Jerim will be moderating that. So if you have any questions, maybe the chat would be a good idea to start putting these questions in. But I hope to answer a couple of key strategic questions. One, how to incorporate innovation, right? We want to innovate. What do we do? Do we go acquire a company, or do we do an innovation lab? What do we do, and what are the options? And then how to govern innovation. I'm going to talk about a concept called Innovation Growth Board, and then how to fund innovation, right? And I'm going to introduce you to a really cool concept. It's called metered funding. Now, as a leader, your biggest challenge is navigating complexity. Right? Yeah, you need to have negotiation skills. Yeah, you need to increase your emotional intelligence. Yes to all of that. But how you make meaning in the absence of full information, you can never have all the information, right? You need to take action. How do you navigate that complexity and uncertainty? A term that came out of the military sciences is VUCA. And I add to it -D. A VUCA world is a world that's volatile. It's a world that's uncertain. What's going to happen? What's the new big thing? It's complex and it's ambiguous. And more importantly, it's driven by disruption. Now, when you think disruption, perhaps it has a negative connotation, like the word crisis. Disruption, something got disrupted, stopped. Now, yes, that could put you out of business. And needless to say, the insurance industry worldwide is in a very precarious situation. It's highly volatile, highly susceptible to disruption. So it's not whether you will or will not get disrupted. If you stay the same course, you will get disrupted. If you aren't already disrupted and you just don't realize it, right? So disruption could be your worst enemy, but also it could be your best friend. So how do we untangle, how do we make sense of innovation? Thank you, Jerim, for the great intro. And I'd just like to add and emphasize that innovation is a human conversation, right? It's not about shiny new systems or hiring one of the big fours. You pay them 200K and they give you a strategy document and no one to execute it. And it's not even owned by the company in the sense of ownership of the initiative and strategy. Innovation has to be an organic, and I don't just mean grassroots. Actually, if you don't have top-down commitment, nothing happens. You need to have board level, CEO, C-suite commitment, and down. But ultimately, it's a human conversation. So how do you activate the human element is something I'm very passionate about within innovation. So everybody who is worth their grain of salt knows that innovation is a strategic priority. However, there's no clear innovation strategy. It's a problem, right? So 96% of executives think that this is a high priority. Only 4 have not defined it as a high priority. Furthermore, most businesses see that their current business model is either being or at risk of being disrupted, and they consider that future success to be highly dependent on innovation, right? From Booz and Co, they did surveys and study on top innovative companies. On average, they have 11% more revenue. And even more interesting, their EBITDA is 22%. That's an order of magnitude there, which means that not only are they increasing their top line growth, but they're actually creating efficiencies into their cost structure, into their operations, getting leaner and faster. So in a way, everybody likes talking about ROI. Right? ROI. There's R2I or ROI squared, which is return on innovation, and no rocket science here. It's like it measures how effectively you turn innovation effort, expenditure, into profitability. But new ideas are inherently risky. What if it doesn't work? Well, a lot of things you're going to try are not going to work. And then companies that achieve high returns, they usually tend to have very early on prototype or beta versions of their products. Don't build a shiny new product and then say, oh, let's test it out, right? Can you test the idea with $100 before you spend $100K? Can you test the idea with $100? And I bet you can. Okay? So ROI is important. R2I or ROI squared is equally important, but I'd like to introduce you to a concept called COI, right? Which is, what is the cost of not taking action, right? You're sitting with a CFO and he's telling you, yeah, I don't see the ROI. You want to invest in people. I don't know. It's not tangible, man. Buy machines, buy stuff I can see. When you want to invest in innovation and experimentation, it's like, too wishy-wash. I need something concrete. What's the ROI? Well, let's look at the ROI, but let's also think, what is the cost of not doing anything, right? And you can actually quantify that as well, okay? So the cost of not taking action, staying the course, business as usual, is a losing game. So many of you may know that most change initiatives fail. And a lot of innovation efforts and projects fail, right? Between 70 to 90%. Why do we still do it, right? But more importantly, what are the failure modes? Why do they fail? One, what I call innovation theater, right? Innovation this, innovation that. I was like, getting excited, hype, right? You need to be able to cut through the noise. What does innovation mean to you within your industry? Every industry is particular. It needs to be contextualized and it needs to be owned, right? None of that, oh yeah, let's spray and pray, like train everybody on human-centered design and, we're going to get innovation. Do more brainstorming sessions. No, innovation is a strategy. Strategy disconnect is when it's like innovation strategy is, there's a mic that's open. If you can mute that, please. So the strategy has to be connected to business goals and objectives. Then you've got the silos and the not invented here, right? I would appreciate somebody from the team if they could silence the mic area. If you hear us. Okay, he's gonna keep on talking until he figures it out. when you have departments, you tend to think in terms of functional areas, and you need that. But I'll remind you that every department is part of the whole. A business is an interconnected set of whole. Sometimes I have fun with sales and marketing executives, putting on the question, which is more important, sales or marketing, right? It's like saying, which is more important, my left or my right foot? It's like, it's all important. Your body has lungs and has a heart and has a stomach. Which is more important, the heart or the stomach? It's the wrong question. So you need to have radical collaboration. Also, disengaged team. If your team is underpaid, they're disengaged. And by the way, 70% of employees worldwide are disengaged. Right? This comes at $500 billion in lost productivity. So if your team is not engaged, because innovation requires that, hey, I got an idea. It's not work, I checked in, right? Checked in, but checked out. Right? Innovation requires creativity, critical thinking, curiosity. So if you don't have an engaged team and an unsupportive culture, all your efforts will be wasted. Lack of data-driven decision-making. And you guys know this, right? Data is king right now in insurance, right? So low risk and no experimentation. Again, industry, banking and the financial services have definitely created a pull effect on the insurance industry, although they were also slow to move, kind of. Now you have companies that are not banks, but they're operating more like banks with amazing services. I just opened a bank account in Delaware online. It's called Mercury. I love it. Everything was online, KYC, everything was just, now I have a bank account. So it's creating a pull effect, but you need to be able to experiment. And then customer disconnect. I always tell entrepreneurs, mistake number 0 for entrepreneurs is building something nobody cares about. It's like, hey, great for you. Like, it needs to be customer driven, not product driven. It needs to be, what do my customers need? And let me tell you, customers' needs are changing rapidly. Technology is driving new behavior, right? So it needs to be connected to the customer. Long development time, and then lack of internal coordination alignment. These are the 9 main reasons why strategies work. I'll give you 30 seconds to look at this comic, which kind of illustrates the innovation theater, right? This year, it's all about AI. Yeah, and podcast, nano influencers, social commerce, definitely blockchain, right? And, somebody asked, shouldn't we talk about our strategy? It's like, yeah, whatever. But, it's also going to be VR and AR, right? So, and this happens in a lot of boardrooms, right? So when you think about running innovation, most companies that, let's say they took the dive, it's like, oh yeah, we want to innovate. Well, 80% of them, they run innovation the same way they ran the business. Not gonna work, okay? So you miss crucial opportunities, you really struggle, and you're not future-oriented, you're past-oriented, you're regurgitating what you've been doing before, right? And that's not a good strategy. So what got you here will not take you there. Einstein, a problem can't be solved with the same level of consciousness that created it, which means leadership. We need to upgrade, but not just upgrade our skills. We need to upgrade our operating system. How do we do that, right? Well, William Pollard has a great quote that reminds us that innovation and learning are synonymous. They go hand in hand. And the arrogance of success is to think that what I did yesterday will be sufficient tomorrow, right? ... It won't, okay? So what is really happening? We all have smartphones, and what you have in your hand is exponential multiplicative technologies, right? Exponential change is driving this revolution that we're this disruption, these times of crisis and opportunity. So what is really happening, right? You see a couple of curves here from Deloitte University Press. One is technology. right? So what's happening with technology? And technology drives a change. It's the fastest. Then you've got individuals like, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to get the new thing, right? There's a lag. Businesses come next, and then usually governments and public policy, although some governments are actually challenging those curves. So two things to notice here. One, those gaps are opportunities, right? When you think about the whole notion of digital transformation, it is nothing more than bringing businesses up to speed with what technology can do for you. Okay, so that's an opportunity. Two, we all know a little bit of math. This is exponential. Now, I'm sure everyone listening in knows what exponential change is. It's like, yeah, that's an exponential curve. It's not linear. However, we don't really understand exponentiality. Our minds are not geared to think in exponential terms. So I want to do a thought experiment with all of you. I'd like you to, in your mind, take 30 linear steps. So in your mind, walk 30 steps. And roughly how many meters would you have crossed? Seconds. Around 30 meters, give and take. What about 30 exponential steps? Well, that's a completely different conversation. 30 exponential steps take you 25 times around the planet. And just take your calculator, do 2 to the 30, because exponentiality is 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. And this is the number you get, 25 times around the planet, right? So we know exponentiality mathematically, but our minds are not geared to think in terms of exponentiality. Now, this is a very interesting curve. And it's deceptive, the deceptive nature of exponential change. You could say that the insurance industry is definitely at an inflection point, right? But from where you're standing, an exponential curve for a while looks linear. So, oh, it's business as usual. Yeah, more of the same. Now, when things start changing, which things are starting to change for you in the insurance industry, right? We are feeling the pressures, we are feeling that we need to do something different. We're not sure how. And, you rationalize, say, no, but it's okay. I mean, there's hope, and hope also looks linear, right? Until you get to scramble, right? Until exponentiality really takes off, right? So, from 1x to 2x, 4x, it's still manageable. But then again, 2 to the 30 is 25 times around the planet. So this is very important to note. And I ask all of you and all of us to think, where are we vis-a-vis the exponential driving or generator function of technology? Where are we? I argue that we are definitely at the inflection point. And a lot of companies are just thinking linearly and hoping for the best. Well, hope is good. I love hope, but hope is not a strategy. So what about innovation? Well, start with, it's not an event. Innovation is not a thing, right? That's an invention. And you could have a great invention that's patented and it's worth zero because nobody wants it. Right? So innovation is not an event. It's a little bit messy. Okay. So it's not like, oh, you do one and then two. It's a little bit messy, but it is a tameable beast. And this is what we will kind of dive a little bit deeper into. Another thought experiment to illustrate innovation. I'd like you to think that you're in a team and I give you a 100-piece puzzle, flip it, and I tell you, solve the puzzle in the fastest amount of time possible, right? So what might happen? You might start thinking, oh, let's split the job. Who's going to do what? Let me do the colors. Somebody will do the curves or the perimeter. Somebody will pick colors. So there's strategy. It's clear. The goal is very clear. Finish the puzzle. Okay. Now, what if I tell you, all right, here's a bunch of cloth and scissors and stuff, and I tell you, create something cool, right? So, Okay, so this is kind of like the quilt activity. And I actually do these activities for people to feel in their muscles the difference between puzzle, and puzzle here is management. Management, business as usual, right? Manage, Six Sigma, reduce errors, increase efficiency, cut cost. Is it important? Yes. But when you come to talk about innovation and you come with the same set of ideas, it doesn't work. So management, the puzzle, you've got a clear goal. Innovation, the goal is not always that clear. In fact, you need to be continuously pivoting. So, with the puzzle, it's like clear. This is strategy, let's go. Right? With innovation, it's iterative. On one side, we're trying to optimize for efficiencies. On the other side, we're trying to experiment and learn. A puzzle is hyper competitive. Even within the team, you may start feeling a competition with, your partner, your team members, like, oh, I'm going to do more than he did, right? A quilt is like, oh, that's cool. Maybe I'll add this here. Let's staple this here. And you're iterating, you're building it as you go along, and it requires radical collaboration. Management is about acceptable loss. Innovation is about learning, feedback. Okay. So big difference. So puzzle is management, quilt is innovation. So if anything, innovation is a process, okay? It's the process of taking customers and organization opportunities and needs and translating that on the other side through this magic infinity into delivered values, solutions, services, products, optimization, so on and so forth. This obviously requires capabilities, culture, and I will focus a little bit on innovation work behavior, right? Because innovation is not about slogans on the wall. Take more risk, embrace your inner weird. It's like, thank you, but I'm still ticking along in the same, right? Why focus on innovation work behavior? Well, you can observe it. You can modify it. You can measure it. Does innovation require an upgraded mindset? Yes, and you would work on that. But if you're not seeing what the change in mindset leads to in terms of behavior, then what's the point? I changed my thinking, but not my doing. Well, who cares? So how do we know we are creating value? Three concentric circles, right? Innovation creates solutions that are desirable. Do people want them? Answers human factors that are feasible. Can it be done? It's like, oh, we want to do this amazing insurance product. It's going to take us $1 million in R&D. And it's like, okay, it's not feasible right now. We got to come up with something cheaper, faster, and iterative. So is it feasible? Can it be done? And then will it make a profit? Right. So the intersection of those is where innovation lives. To give you a high level perspective, and this is the best way to think about innovation that I've come across, in a while. It's looking at innovation from the product solution perspective, which is one set of lens, and then the market impact. Okay, so again, it needs to be viable. So from the product solution, you've got incremental innovation versus radical innovation. No rocket science. Incremental is a series of gradual improvements. It doesn't create a new value, a completely new product. It's like, oh, phone uses 30% less power. Great. That's an incremental. Radical is like, no, this is a whole new technology. This is going from cathode ray tube televisions to plasma, right? You can't, they're not connected, okay? Examples of that radical innovation is XaaS, right? X as a service, chatbots, additive manufacturing, blockchain. These are radical innovations. Now, incremental or radical is something you can control more than the market impact. Market impact, either of these innovations on the product or solution level, either incremental or radical, can either result in a sustaining or a disruptive innovation. So a sustaining innovation is, again, faster phone, cheaper, more megapixels, right? It's sustaining something, right? A disruptive, it creates a new market, right? Sort of like, oh, for a while we didn't have, you couldn't buy insurance online. Now, you can. So that was a disruption, right? So transistor radio, steam engine, things like that. These are disruptive. Virtual workplaces, right? That's disruptive, right? It's a new way. There are new companies that are coming up to support that. Case in point, Zoom, right? So then we get, consultants love matrices. So here's a matrix for you, right? So you get a 4-quadrant matrix, right? On one side, you've got, is the product incremental or radical? Okay. So, and on the other, what is the market impact, which you can, predict, but you can't control, because who knows, right? There's a lot of technologies that, were bet on. Case in point, Segway. Every investor in Silicon Valley had money in Segway. It was a beautiful piece of engineering. You still see it in malls, right? And they said it's going to replace the bicycle. Well, guess what? They did not predict the market. It wasn't a disruption. It wasn't even sustaining. It's almost irrelevant. You see them now in malls, and you see them occasionally, people giving tours, like touristy tours, right? Why? Well, society said, it wasn't the technology. It wasn't, it's just people were not ready to look like, they're on a Segway. It wasn't cool, actually. So that's a different conversation, what the impact on the market. But this is a concrete way to talk about innovation to your fellow team members, to your board, to your stakeholders, in a way that makes sense and that includes the fact that it needs to be desirable, viable, and feasible. So what does it mean to lead innovation and to be intrapreneurial, right? So if we say that entrepreneurship is about identifying opportunities, taking calculated risks, and leverage available resources to create value, entrepreneurship is the same thing, but it's adaptation within organizations. There's a really great interview with Steve Jobs way back when Apple was at its height. And he started off by saying, we are the biggest startup in the world, right? Their structure, their way of doing business, their thinking, the healthy creative friction and abrasion all contributes to making a great culture. So what about this attitude and mindset that can drive innovation? I like to start by saying that if you're a great leader, you're good at plan B and C and D, right? Because plan A never works, right? Seldom works. So, are you good at plan B? Can you change direction, right? Now, innovation and business is part science. You can go get an MBA from university and you've got the science of business, but then it's also part art. So entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship is more like a craft. So it's a skill. It's a skill. Yes, I need to understand frameworks and strategy and business, but then there's an art part of it that, is often, forgotten, right? You get that through experience and learning and talking to 1 million people and soundboarding, right? Jerim, you will like this slide because I think it speaks to your good crisis, COVID being a good crisis. Crisis in Japanese is made up of 2 kanjis. The first one is danger. The second kanji is opportunity. So kiki in Japanese, danger and opportunity. So from the get-go, recognize, we need to keep the lights on. There's danger, but there's always an opportunity, right? You need to be agile. You need to be adaptive. You need to be creative, not just to survive, but to thrive. Okay? Chameleon is a beautiful piece of natural engineering that is just so adaptive that you can barely see it, That's why it's one of the oldest animals on the planet. Okay, so a good analogy is if you are if you are the Titanic. I mean, we've all seen the Titanic, I hope. They saw the iceberg, but they couldn't turn in time because it's a mammoth, right? That's not agility. Okay, so compare a giant, freight liner with a speedboat. Speedboat, you turn off the engine, you stop in 5 meters, 10 meters. Big flights, carrier, you stop the engine, it takes 8 miles to stop. So you got to build agility into your thinking, but also into your processes. Another key insight with regards to how to lead is thinking back to how we drive a bicycle, right? You don't drive a bicycle by saying, in 5 meters, I'm going to turn slightly left to avoid the tree. No, that's called command and control, okay? What you do is you sense and steer. Now, I'm not making an argument to say out with KPIs and measurements and Six Sigmas and, efficiencies. You need to command and control, right? However, when it comes to innovation, you need to think, how do I drive a bike? It's dynamic. It's responsive. It's adaptive. It's sensing. Sensing means you need to have feelers out there on the industry, what's happening, right? And then you need to steer, and it's a dynamic process. Okay, so this is key to high-level thinking around innovation. So back to how this looks like in your organization, and I told you I will speak about innovation work behavior. But first, where can you innovate? Well, anybody knows Safaricom? What is Safaricom? Is it a telecom? I mean, I know they have more stuff and more bundles now, but is Safaricom a payment solution provider? Is it a big data thing? Now, a big question: is Safaricom going to go into insurance? Well, they can definitely leverage the value chain, right? So you can innovate everywhere, and you should. So when you think about tech and insurance, there's great opportunity. Needless to say, digital first, mobile first. Go where the customer is, right? You don't need a landline and a dial-up modem to say, I'm partaking in technology. People just leapfrog. They get a phone, and all of a sudden the world is there. They do their payments online. They want to buy everything online, and they're going to demand that from you. You need to think mobile first and digital first, data-driven. You need to think customer experience and penetration. I mean, I was speaking to Jerim, and he was mentioning that the model of having agents, even if you have 5,000 agents, in a country of 50 million, what's your scalability here, right? You need 50,000 agents. So think differently about customer experience, and how do you acquire customer acquisition, and then value across the value chain. This is from Dublin Innovation, and it's 10 areas where you can innovate. The way I like to think of it as, it's a show. Your business is a show. You've got front of the stage and you've got back of the stage, and you've got in the middle your offering, the actual thing. So the front of the stage is where what your customer sees. That's the experience. So service, you can innovate on service. Zappos, the biggest seller of shoes online, is all about customer service. Not like they have amazing shoes, just retailer, but obsessed about service. Channel, where do you go? Think Nespresso. Like, you go to an espresso shop and you're like, wow, what an experience. Think IQOS, right? I personally don't like it, but they create different channels, right? So you need to be thinking channels at this point. Your brand, right? So all of that is experience. Your customer engagement. What are the customer touch points, and how are we improving those? And then in the back end, it's like, hey, can we make money differently? What's our profit model? What's our network like? Who are we bringing as partners? Who are our distribution channels? Structure. How are you structured? I always say that everything can be copied except your leadership and your culture. So that could be your magic sauce or your process. And in the middle, you've got the product performance, that's the offering, and the product system. Couple of, kind of quick run. So to showcase that there's so much that can be done with insurance. Solvit is an on-demand asset and situation inspection platform. It's like they're leveraging crowdsourcing plus data plus, all of a sudden I have an inspector with a phone, and they serve multiple stakeholders, businesses, obviously brokers, and then solvers as well, an opportunity, to make money. So is this a labor market solution or an insurance solution? Well, it's both, and why not? Innovation is not about either or. Innovation is about looking for that powerful and, look at your thinking sometimes. Should we do this or that? Always say, or maybe we can do both, right? That's innovation. You're integrating and you're iterating. Esri is a risk management solution and provides GIS solutions for insurance and other industries, right? It's like hyper local. What does that mean? It's like, hey, in this area, there's less accidents. Okay, let's lower our prices there. Right? So needless to say, I'm sure you can think of many other solutions, right? Lazarus uses AI to do early detection of cancer. If they use their solution, they can bring the mortality rate to sub 4% for cervical, skin, and ovarian cancer. Think of the savings, right? Think prevention, not just, somebody got sick, we have a claim. Like, how can you preempt, right? Spot, it's geared towards a different customer segment, Usually a professional skier or somebody who just loves skiing or loves adventure doesn't think life insurance, right? But you could probably convince them, hey, your equipment, we'll insure your equipment, and injury, event-based injury insurance, right? So it's a short-term, month-to-month policy. It's like, I'm going on a trip. Okay, can I have an insurance there? Attestive, we all know that deep fakes are rising, right? And we know that insurance fraud costs insurance companies a lot of money. So, these guys, use distributed ledgers, i.e. blockchain, and deep learning models to detect tampered photos and manipulated audio. Imagine if you have that into your workflow, how much saving down the line would it flock? It's like, we need to insure drones. Let's partner with Allianz and launch our product Flock Cover. It's a pay-as-you-fly insurance and safety app. Okay. Sorcero, natural language processing. So insurance is very domain specific. So, right, can you leverage AI and integrate that into your chatbots, for example, to do wonders with your customers, right? To bring you insight. Let the computer churn and give you insight. Hey, maybe you should be looking to this, right? And then do deep customization, because through NLP, you can really understand your customers, right? Within these solutions. So we have around 12 minutes to go. So let's get more serious about strategy, right? There are 7 pillars for an innovation-driven organization. You know them all. It's just that you're going to see them all on a screen. So I'm not going to tell you anything you don't already know, but maybe some insights. Strategy and leadership, right? Innovation can't be paying lip service. Yeah, we want to innovate, go talk to HR. No, I want to talk to you, CEO. I want to talk to you, board, because that's where the magic happens, the strategy, the leadership. And leadership needs to follow up with commitment and behaviors that represent the new direction we're heading, right? It's not like, you go innovate. Leadership is about showing others the way by moving before them, right? By leading. So strategy and leadership. Customer centricity, mentioned that, right? You need to have processes and technology, an engaged team, risk-taking culture. Again, resources and agility. Are you a carrier, a freightliner, or are you a speedboat? Maybe you're somewhere in between. And then crucially, industry knowledge. So look at these two diametrical ones. Customer centricity on one side, that's the east, that's where the sun rises, that's where your source of value. You need to be customer centric and customer driven. And then industry knowledge, right? Don't be a Blockbuster or a Kodak or a Nokia, right? Where, just didn't get it, right? You are being disrupted. You assume you are being disrupted, right? Can we glean insights? Can we talk to our customers? Are we engaging with our partners? Get your team to bring in insights. So I put this for your benefit. The PDF will be shared with the team, and you can request it if you want, but this is just for your own reference. I'd like to show you a showcase of the power of customer centricity, right? In leveraging innovation, right? So GE does many things, all the way from ballistic missiles to your friendly little washing machine, and they do MRI machines. If anybody has been into those machines, they're claustrophobic, they're annoying, and some people really get annoyed. Particularly bad, this experience is for children. So children actually develop post-traumatic stress syndrome after going into an MRI machine. They hate it. Now, GE hired, they had this the engineer called Doug Dietz, and he was tasked with, improving that. He's like, we need to solve that. This is an issue. So he could have said, hey, we need 10 million to reduce the sound of the compressors, and we want bigger magnets, so we need to make it bigger. But what he did, he engaged in customer-centric design, human-centered design, and observed and looked. And the solution that they came up with is not a $10 million solution. They came up with is $100 solution. They transformed the experience to one that is enjoyable. Now, it's not about a claustrophobic machine. This is an adventure. You're going into space. This is a spaceship. The compressors, those are the engines turning on. Come on, let's go. And lo and behold, we transformed PTSD to, when am I going to do it again? Right? With $100. Okay. So don't assume that you need a lot of money to innovate. You don't. Okay. So again, to innovation work behavior, and this has to do with teams. And I always say, of course, we all know we need good communication, clarity of roles and structure, and all of that nice stuff in an engaged team. But the most important thing and relevant for innovation and creativity is psychological safety. If I don't feel psychologically safe in my team, I am less likely to voice any opinion, let alone, go on a wild idea. Okay, so keep that in mind. So as I mentioned, innovation is measurable, it's observable, and it's modifiable. You can incentivize for behavior. Okay, so what is innovation work behavior? Again, the process is turning opportunities found internally and externally into delivered value. So there are 4 things that need to happen. First, you need to have the ability, capacity, and motivation to identify opportunity. Before you start saying, let's brainstorm, guys, what are we going to do? Like, wrong question, right? Where are the opportunities? Okay, so this is a different skill than idea generation, right? Yes, idea generation is important, right? But it's part of the process. And even if you get amazing ideas, if you don't have anybody to champion them, they're not going to make themselves. You need to have champions. And then you have to have implementation. So these are behaviors that you can measure for, you can incentivize for, you can simply upgrade your, yearly performance appraisal. Never do yearly. I know that most companies still do yearly, but it needs to be quarterly at, in the least. Because otherwise it's not really measuring anything. You've all been there where it's, I have to do the performance review. Okay, Always good. Here's some feedback, right? It needs to be dynamic. And all of this needs to happen in a feedback-rich environment. So again, leaders are good at plan B. 93% of companies that become uber successful, they had to abandon their original strategy, right? Think Uber, actually. Uber, probably, if they're ever going to be profitable, they are not profitable. They are reported 8.6 billion on 16 billion revenue. So how do you manage that? But they would probably need to pivot, okay? So a strategy is as good as it de-risks your activities. So how can we reduce the uncertainty and the cost profile over time? Couple of ideas. So pick your focus and innovation mix, meaning incremental versus radical. Needs to be aligned with business goals. You need to communicate your strategy, okay, far and wide. You know, the janitor needs to know where you're heading. The CEO needs to know where you're heading. I know that strategy is usually, it's like, oh, you know, the strategy is like a best kept secret. Of course, you know, you might want to water the strategy down when you talk to the janitor, but that alignment is so powerful, okay? And then you need to be measuring systematically and adapting. So in a corporate innovation setting, there are three main challenges, right? First challenge is the ideation challenge. Right? Where do we spot the opportunity? You know, how do we balance between the short term and the long term? And how do we select the most promising innovations? I mean, it's very uncertain, might fail. The validation challenge is, you know, let's look at our assumptions. You know, is this a real challenge that has an attractive market size, or, you know, we're just assuming so from our ivory towers in the boardroom, right? Test assumptions, validate, right? Avoid unjustified investments. And, you know, how can you be smarter, not working harder, working smarter and harder? How can you beat the competition? And then you've got the scale up, right? So this is where you turn your engine growth on, and then you create the right conditions for growth. And although there's presented a 1, 2, 3, they're actually kind of in parallel, right? But of course, there's a center of gravity that moves through them. This is another way to look at the same idea, right? So first you have, this is about testing, right? You know, first you have the problem solution fit. Is this a real problem, you know, or not, right? Is it a real problem that, you know, awareness is very low in the peripheries of Nairobi for an insurance company, right? Go test it, right? Send some people out, you know, estimate. So problem solution fit. Then you've got solution market fit. It's different, right? You know, how we build something that people really want, right? That's iterative. And then business model fit. Like this is where you start optimizing. Like, okay, let's shave some money here. Let's be more efficient here. Let's outsource this part, create cost efficiencies. And, you know, let's bring a partner, network effect, you know, distribution channel, right? Think of adjacent industries, actually, because, you know, I do this in my business, right? I say, oh, I need awareness and I need audience. I start thinking what adjacent industries to mine have a lot of audiences. And I say, I'm going to borrow their audiences. So I go to them, I start studying them, and I'd say, listen, you have this audience that you provide 1, 2, 3, 4 value amazingly. Can I come and fill this gap? Because I think your audience may also want, you know, some insurance. Hey, right? Can you borrow other people's audiences? That's a great strategy. And that's where you start doing the business model optimization. Okay. So if you think about it, there's 3 horizons, right? There's one axis is value and the other is time, you know. So think in terms of core business, growth business, and then future business. Obviously, these are spread across different time horizons, right? So horizon 1 is like, you know, we need to pay the bills. So this is your sustaining innovation. This is your continuous improvement, right? Is that innovation? Yeah. But you know, what new couple of projects are you working on? You're experimenting, you're in the lab, some disruptive innovation. And then, transformative innovations, like, are we betting on the right technologies? Okay, here's a couple of startups that are in their seed stage. We believe they're great. Let's invest in 3 of them early on, because if they make it big, hey, we're in the game, right? That could be a way, right? Or you could do it in-house. Now, I just want you to look at these frameworks. I know you know them, right? But we're gonna relate them to these challenges and validation phases, problem solution, solution market, and then business model fit, right? So if you're still studying, right, things and trying to get insights, you always want to start with design thinking, right? Now, you can't use design thinking across the board. Like if I'm like growing, like, okay, it's irrelevant. We got the insights already. But you've got design thinking. This is exploring the problem. You've got lean. Lean is like build, test, iterate, learn, build, test, iterate, learn, right? You're iterating, you're shipping product as fast as you can, okay? So this is about building the right things. And then agile, as not necessarily in you can be agile in your management style, not just necessarily in programming. I mean, the Agile Manifesto came out of that, but agile is a way of thinking. It's build the things right. So build the right things is lean. You're getting feedback. And build the thing right is agile, right? This is the day-to-day. And then finally, your go-to-market, is your growth engines. So you can see that depending on the project you're working on, you would have a center of gravity moving through these, right? Again, they look linear, but they're kind of overlapping, okay? So always think about minimum viable solution. I like solution instead of product because, not everything is a product, right? So, this is not a low quality, it doesn't work. Minimum viable solution doesn't mean, oh, it's cranky and it crashes, it's okay. No, it needs to be built right? But not all the bells and whistles, you can afford not to optimize the colors or the curves or, not invest big in icons, You want something that gets the value delivered and clearly communicates the offering, right? And then viable, right? So, somewhere in between, okay? That's a minimum viable solution. This is what this looks like. Again, this is for your own reference in terms of the cycle. And maybe I'll just focus on go-to-market because go-to-market is all about, learning, right? So you've got a go-to-market plan, it forms your marketing and sales, and then think customer success, not customer feedback. Customer centricity is about insight. If you ask your customers, what do you want? They don't know. They don't know, right? You need to understand them better than they understand themselves, right? So think about customer success when it comes to turning on your growth engines. So back to these 3 strategic questions, and I will spend 7 minutes to finalize. So how do you incorporate innovation, right? You have on one axis, the x-axis, innovation source. Is it internal? Is it hybrid? Or is it external? And then innovation stage. Where are you? You're ideating, you're developing, or you're scaling, okay? So you can start with, the R&D, longer term, internal, right? Kind of source of innovation, to doing a venture studio with maybe, a partner, all the way to say, hey, I want the easy way out. That's the technology I want. Let's acquire it, right? So M&A and divestment as well. Partnerships could be, an opportunity, product innovation. You can do an innovation lab. You can do an internal hackathon, an accelerator. It's like, hey, let's run an accelerator for the next 4 weeks. Accelerator, create teams. So where do you incorporate it? Well, you need to answer that for yourself. But these are the options that you have. I mean, strategy is a set of options you choose from. How do you govern innovation? This is key, right? We like to talk about growth board or innovation growth board, right? So you need to make decisions like VCs do, like venture capitalists do, right? So a growth board is cross-functional. It reflects appropriate business owners and top management vision. It has a budget and a resource mandate. It uses data to make what we call pivot or persevere, right? Or drop, right? So decisions, so it needs to be data-driven. And it enables and encourages top-down, but also bottom-up collaboration, okay? So imagine you have this team that's cross-functional. One, you start creating those synergies that are necessary to radically collaborate, because our problem in sales and marketing could be actually solved by a solution used in product, right? In underwriting, right? They use a tool that we could use, right? So creates that synergy. And you could also say that it supports the innovation work behavior by having champions, like, oh, I know you need these resources. I'm on it. You know, we're going to get it for you, right? So innovation board, you know, and it's not siloed. You know, it's not like, oh, you know, what's, okay, we're going to give a budget for sales and marketing to innovate. We're going to give a budget to product design to innovate. Not the right way to go. And it acts like a VC in the sense that they're making bets on things, but a VC understands that it's a hit and miss, right? Internally, you don't want to say, you know, completely like a VC, but it'll become clearer as I discuss how this happens, right? So how does this board work? Let's say you create a hackathon, you know, and you'd say, okay, give me your 5-minute pitch. Let's see your business case. Okay, great idea. You evaluate, idea and pitch, growth board. You validate, and you validate through experiments. It's like, okay, let's do it. Show me validation. Validate the problem. I'm not sure about the solution. Iterate, validate, right? So you run experiments, and then you either double down, you pivot, or you preserve, or you discontinue. Okay, this is how an innovation board works. Now, innovation requires money, right? So traditional funding's like, you know, what's your budget for the year, right? Typically it's a central decision making, and really you're shooting yourself in the foot, because people know that, you know, I have that budget. It's like, oh, how am I going to spend it, right? Not the way to go. Metered funding is what a VC does. That's why there's pre-seed, seed, series A, B, C, so on and so forth. So let's say of your 5 ideas, you know, of 10 ideas, you said 5 we're going to give a chance, right? You do metered funding. You say, all right, 5, each of you is going to get $1,000, not more, but we need 100K. Well, you don't have 100K. I want you to validate your biggest assumptions with 1,000. Can you do that? If you can't do that, I'm talking to the wrong person, right? So you do what we called metered funding. You allocate funding over a series of rounds. Funding is based on milestones and goals. You don't know whether you're going to fund idea 1 or 5 more. Validation. So in the early Jerim, I think your mic is open. Thank you. In the early stages, funding is learning-based, and then in later staging, funding is growth-based. Right? So imagine that pipeline, right? Imagine it in your own company, right? You've got some ideas, okay? 5,000 for 5 ideas, right? Second round, oh, okay, idea 2 and 4 dropped. All right, everybody else, you get 5,000, okay? Show me some prototypes. Right. And then you get 2 ideas and you say, all right, 25,000, 50,000 for each. And then you run with the ideas that you feel. So this is just in terms of thinking, so simple, right? And, you know, you've got project initiation, and then you know, with the innovation board, which is cross-functional, everybody involved, you do pivot and preserve until you innovate, you know, you integrate into your DNA. Okay. Some final tips. Always be ready to pivot. Okay. You know, maybe your core business model needs to be pivoted. Don't shy away from that conversation. Assess it, you know, because everything looks rosy on papers. Oh, we have a strategy document. Okay. You know, your plan looks rosy, but the reality is, oh my God, didn't know it's going to rain. Didn't know I have to take a boat and build one, right? There's a really great book by James Clear. It's called Atomic Habits. I'm actually reading it right now. And it talks about the power of tiny gains, the 1% better, right? So it's not about, I want to lose, 50 kilograms. It's like, can I lose 250 grams this week? That's 1% better, right? But 1% compounded is a wonder, okay? This is Albert Einstein's quote, right? You can read it. But 1% better every day, that's 1.01 to 365. That's 38 times better by the end of the year, right? 1% worse every day is the opposite, inverse. So be 1% better. It's not about waking up in the morning and doing a masterpiece on a canvas. It's about waking up in the morning and putting some strokes on the canvas, okay? Just put some strokes, right? And that's how you should think about innovation. Always be measuring, right? You've got OKRs. These could can be considered as lead measures. What are the objectives and key results? And then you've got lag measures. It's like, okay, we've done this and now we're looking at this. And how much customer insight do we have? How many new products did we launch? What's profitability from new products launched? So you can figure out what KPIs make sense to you, but always be measuring. Also, listen obsessively to your employees, right? We talk about UX and CX, customer UX and employee UX. Sometimes we call them CX and EX. Well, employees drive value creation. So you need to be listening obsessively to both your customers and your employees. Beware of platforms, right? Wherever there's friction, look for a platform to appear. Okay, so think about that. I'm sure you're already on many platforms. Just open your phone, and as your business, I'm sure you're on many platforms. But look for friction in customer experience. Like, can I shave off all visits to agents? Can I improve customer engagement by a couple of percent? And then innovation, again, is messy, but you can tame the beast, right? So your market and your innovation funnel, nobody talks about open innovation right now. You know why? Because everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing it. So it's not a thing anymore. Open innovation is like, oh, our competitor is doing something. Let's, partner with them on that, So you can get innovation from outside, insource it, outsource it, collaborate, get into networks. So think open innovation. And then finally, we all talk about embracing failure. There is no failure. There's only feedback. A better way to phrase it is embrace experimentation. By experimenting, you're learning, you're getting somewhere, you're putting some strokes on the canvas. And then ultimately, if you are not willing to engage in that, then the price of inaction is far greater than you making a mistake, So make mistakes, encourage that. And I like this slide from the Matrix, So it's like red pill or blue pill, There's no real choice here. You either innovate or you become irrelevant. The choice is always yours. Thank you very much. And I hope that, I know this has been fast and dense, but this is recorded, so you can come back to it, and the PDF will be shared with you. So thank you very much. Asante sana, everyone. And Jerim, back to you.
Thanks a great deal. Can we just put our hands together and give Rajan a round of applause for an excellent presentation. And I think as we do that, maybe Rajan, you can fill your glass of water, and I want to open it up for questions. But before I do that, allow me just to, make a recap very, very quickly. I think you've taken us through this moving us to the kind of system that we need to create for it, that needs to be present for innovation to happen. Going through the fact that the outcomes of innovation can be measured and tracked.
Lost to Jerim. If you can still get us, kindly be in touch.
Yeah, I lost Jerim too, so I guess his connection is.
Yeah. So my internet got interrupted for a minute. Yeah, so I think that was a great presentation. We must acknowledge, and finally, just to make a mention of the fact that innovation is not a nice to do thing. I think given the changes and the shifts that are happening in our environment, I think innovation becomes an imperative for organizations to survive. I think finally you've spoken around areas where innovation can happen and debunked this idea that that a lot of people are fixated around innovation just happening around products. And I like the way you position it, that we should not be looking at products, but we should be looking at solutions. And that is aligned to customer-centric thinking. I think with that, I want to open it up to participants to come in and ask questions, seek any clarification, insights that you may want. So to the participants, can we ask questions of this very, very good presentation that has just happened? Thanks, Yazan, once more.
Thank you so much. Even as we do so, I will quickly refer us to one of the questions that have been asked at the chat section by Caroline. I don't know whether you were able to view it from your side, Dr. Yazan and Bwana Jerim. The question is from Caroline Munene, that is, insurance companies have traditional hierarchical structures and governance that choke innovations. Any idea on how to organize better?
Yeah, I think, that's the challenge. Thank you, Caroline. I mean, very at the core of change management, if you will. The tension between the old and the new, the tension, as I spoke with Jerim the other day, between, the newcomers that don't wear a suit and tie, and then, the traditionalists, right? And I think one way to contextualize and frame the conversation is, one, you want to invite conversation. If you come and say, we should do this, nobody's going to believe you, right? But invite conversation through curiosity and mindful questioning, and also, include people. So, if I'm dealing with somebody who is a traditionalist in their thinking, one, I'm not going to make them at fault. I mean, they're in their 70s and they're on the board and they've got a lot of seasoned experience. It doesn't mean that they're, can't add value. So how can you include them? I think, by making sure that you take these traditionalist hierarchical people in the organization and start saying, all right, we need to do something differently. Let's see, let's work together, right? And then bringing in the youth that challenges ideas, but creating partnerships between that new thinking and old thinking, rather than an either or. Look for the and. It's both. That seasoned experience is so important to making sure that things run smoothly and efficiently, and in a manner that adheres to risk management. But then, make sure that the youngsters as well look to their elders as, a source and a well of knowledge and wisdom. And for the elders to see that these youngsters are, they are the future. This is an opportunity for you to talk to the future. That's what I would say. Creating less hierarchy it can be done without making any radical changes. You know, your insurance companies, that's not that easy, right? That's why the innovation board comes in. You know, this is a cross-functional team that sits on top, and you know, it's got a clear mandate, it's talking to everybody, so you can flatten out the hierarchy by implementing innovation ambassador or innovation growth team. I hope that answers the question, Caroline.
So much. So I'll quickly take you on the Q&A section for the comments that have been given by Felix, saying great presentation from Dr. Yazan. I'm learning a lot. Dixon says great topic on current environment and innovation, specifically with the current challenges on working virtually. How can organizations measure productivity better, especially where semi-automated systems while maintaining a motivated staff? Some productivity tools are not effective since staff feel it as a formality. Maybe a quick response to that one, and then we can, in the interest of for that section.
So stop treating innovation as a commodity. Well, everything's being commoditized. You know, as technology moves forward, things get commoditized, right? Data is becoming commoditized. Platforms are becoming commoditized, you know. So cost reductions and commoditization is a natural process. What I would say is focus on the process, right? Yeah, yes, you need the goals, but focus on the process, because you don't know where you're going to really end up. You chart a clear north as best as you can, and then you say, let's start the journey. And the journey might surprise you, pleasantly surprise you. So, but, you know, always think customer-centric and industry foresight when it comes to insurance, right? Everything in between, of course, culture, processes, but think those things, and you know, what is the strategy, and is it aligned with business goals? And don't think product, right? You know, don't think solution. Think process, and think value chain. You know, 10 areas where you can innovate.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Dr. Yazan. We are happy that you are able to join us and you've been able to give us great insights in our session. We also confirm that slides will be shared, so the people can be confident, all people who are attending virtually and physically, the slides will be shared for you. And then, of course, Asante Daktari, you've actually given us an email address. There's an email address on your chat section for you to be able to directly to him and get more insights. I can't wait to email you in a few and ask where we can visit where you are. Now, in the interest of time, we want to thank you so much for being on board with us, and thank you for joining us. We hope you can still keep with us for the rest of the sessions of the day. We'll be happy to have you on board. Asante